Rob Reiner as Michael Meathead Stivic. Fans of All in the Family will forever cherish the memory of Michael Stivic, the vibrant voice of a passionate, progressive generation. Through his natural and razor-sharp performance, Rob Reiner transformed Meathead into the perfect ideological foil to Archie Bunker, sparking fiery televised debates that fundamentally reshaped the landscape of American media. This innate talent earned him 2 prestigious Emmy Awards, serving as a powerful springboard that propelled him into the ranks of legendary directors, gifting humanity with timeless cinematic masterpieces. Yet, hidden beneath the brilliant glow of genius was an unending internal struggle to escape the towering shadow of his legendary father, Carroll Reiner. In his youth, Rob grappled with deep-seated insecurities, wandering in search of his own identity amidst the heavy expectations of his family and the crushing pressure of being the son of an icon. This emotional burden intensified in 1981 when his 10-year marriage to director Penny Marshall ended in a devastating divorce. The rift was more than a romantic failure. It was a profound psychological blow that plunged him into a cycle of loneliness and depression, forcing him to balance a peak career with the hollow silence of a home stripped of joy. The crescendo of tragedy struck as Rob Reiner entered the stormy twilight of his life. The passing of his father in 2020, his final spiritual pillar, left him adrift in a void of loss. However, the most harrowing truth only surfaced in the closing days of 2025. The world stood in shock at the news that the brilliant director and his wife, Michelle Singer, were found lifeless in their Malibu estate. A brutal homicide claimed his life at the age of 78, turning a home once synonymous with opulence into a gruesome crime scene. Most painful of all was the cruel betrayal by those close to him, weaving a real-life narrative darker and more somber than any horror film he could have directed. On set, he was the master of romance and human connection. In reality, Rob's journey ended in a scene of ultimate violence and agony. Rob Reiner's sudden departure in December 2025 has left an unfillable void in the hearts of cinephiles worldwide. Though his life met a tragic end, his colossal intellectual legacy and his tireless fight for justice will forever serve as a guiding torch for future generations. The artist has bid farewell to this mortal realm, but his profoundly humanistic films will live on, transcending the boundaries of time and the scars of earthly suffering. Carroll O'Connor as Archie Bunker. When All in the Family is mentioned, audiences immediately think of Archie Bunker, the stubborn yet magnetic man who ruled a legendary living room. Carroll O'Connor breathed life into the character with extraordinary mastery, turning Archie into an enduring symbol of American culture and earning himself 4 prestigious Emmy Awards. In the hearts of millions, he embodied strength and blunt honesty, a guardian of traditional family values that once defined an era. Yet behind that glittering crown lay a life suffocated by unspoken pain and quiet torment. The tragedy began with Carroll's intense longing to be a father, leading him to adopt Hugh O'Connor when the boy was only 6 days old. He poured all his love and hope into his only child, only for fate to turn cruel as Hugh fell into a devastating cycle of drug addiction that lasted 16 long years. For over a decade, Carroll helplessly watched his son enter and leave rehabilitation centers dozens of times, each attempt ending in despair. The weight of fame transformed his home into a prison of silence and conflict. Despite exhausting every effort, even casting Hugh alongside him in the heat of the night to keep a close eye on him, Carroll could do nothing to stop the darkness of addiction from consuming the son he loved more than life itself. The final blow came on March 28, 1995, the darkest turning point of his life. Hugh O'Connor took his own life with a gun at the age of 32, on the very day marking his 3rd wedding anniversary, leaving behind a young child and a father shattered beyond repair. His son's death pushed Carroll into a brutal legal battle, fueled by blood and tears, against Harry Perzigian, the man who supplied Hugh with drugs. Carroll publicly denounced him as a murder partner, a cry of rage born from unbearable grief and self-reproach. In his final years, the image of a strong, commanding Carroll faded into that of a frail, lonely old man wandering a vast Malibu mansion. Complications from type 2 diabetes ravaged his body, breaking him down both physically and emotionally. How bitter it was that on screen, Archie Bunker always had an answer to every problem, while in real life, Carroll was utterly defeated by his son's grave, drowning in a helplessness that tore his heart apart. On June 21, 2001, Carroll O'Connor's heart finally stopped after a severe heart attack at the age of 76. He passed away quietly, bringing an end to a long journey scarred by profound emotional wounds. Though his body now rests beside Hugh's grave at Westwood Village Memorial Park, the legacy of Archie Bunker lives on, forever etched into the collective memory of television audiences around the world. The fierce legal battle between Carroll O'Connor and the man who supplied drugs to his son once ignited a storm of public debate, sharply dividing opinion. Many expressed deep sympathy, viewing his relentless actions as the justified rage of a grieving father, an attempt to confront and eradicate the poison of drugs from society. Others, however, argued that his public attacks were merely a way to escape the crushing guilt of having failed to protect his son from the very beginning. So, what do you think? Was Carroll's fight an act of courage from a broken father, or a desperate effort to soothe the weight of past mistakes? Comment 1 if you stand with him, or 0 if you see it differently. Sherman Hemsley as George Jefferson. Sherman Hemsley entered the universe of All in the Family in 1973, instantly creating a television earthquake through the character of George Jefferson. With his confident, hot-tempered, yet irresistibly humorous presence, he became the perfect counterbalance, every appearance commanding attention. His natural talent not only elevated Sherman to A-list stardom, but also turned George Jefferson into a powerful symbol of upward mobility and pride within the black community in American society at the time. Beneath the brilliance of that ever-radiant performer lay deep voids of emptiness and fear, rooted in a painful past. Abandoned by his biological father as a child, Sherman carried a lifelong wound of emotional deprivation into an entertainment world rife with illusion and pretense. He chose a life of isolation, never marrying, never having children, haunted by the terrifying belief that allowing anyone too close would only lead to further pain. This extreme loneliness drove him toward increasingly unusual behavior. Rather than human companionship, Sherman found comfort among hundreds of dolls in his silent home in El Paso, Texas. Amid Hollywood's glamour, he battled prolonged depression throughout the 1990s, quietly enduring discrimination and the crushing pressure of maintaining his status as one of the era's leading black stars. The true nightmare emerged when aggressive lung cancer began to ravage Sherman's body, reducing the once quick-witted George Jefferson to a frail figure, struggling for breath in the final days of his life. Yet the harshest truth was revealed only on July 24, 2012. Sherman died at the age of 74 in complete silence, unnoticed by the world. His legendary body lay cold and alone inside his home for 3 full months, undiscovered and unsearched for by anyone. Even in death, his final dignity was violated by a bitter legal battle over his estate between his friend Flora Enchinton and a man claiming to be a relative, David Enchinton. The dispute delayed his burial for months, turning his funeral into a painful spectacle of controversy. Ironically, on screen he portrayed a man surrounded by a loud, bustling family, yet in real life, Sherman's journey ended in chilling abandonment, without a single farewell from those closest to him. Sherman Hemsley's passing in 2012 closed a life defined by the stark contrast between glory and bitterness. Despite a tragic ending marked by temporary obscurity, the artistic flame he ignited continues to burn brightly in the hearts of those who cherish the Jefferson family. The gifted artist has found eternal rest, leaving behind the legacy of an immortal George Jefferson, a towering figure who wove laughter for the world from the fabric of his own pain. Mel Stewart as Henry Jefferson. Viewers of All in the Family can hardly forget Henry Jefferson, the hot-tempered, outspoken younger brother of George Jefferson. Mel Stewart delivered a powerful performance in the role, creating sharp, era-defining confrontations with Archie Bunker. Henry was never merely a comedic figure. Through Mel's portrayal, he became a symbol of resistance and black pride, imprinting enduring lessons about dignity within a society shaken by constant change. Behind those passionate scenes lay a real life suffocated by political pressure and profound personal sacrifice. As a committed civil rights activist, Mel Stewart was placed under special FBI surveillance, forcing him to live beneath a cloud of fear and constant tension. His Hollywood career faced persistent barriers as well, confined to stereotypical roles shaped by prejudice. For decades, his wife, Annie Dong, lived with unrelenting anxiety for her husband's safety. In giving so much of himself to social ideals, Mel unintentionally missed the milestones of his daughter's growth, leaving him with an enduring sense of guilt upon realizing that his private happiness had been crushed beneath the weight of a greater mission. The cruelest sentence arrived in his later years, when Mel Stewart confronted the devastating onset of Alzheimer's disease. This heartbreaking turn gradually stripped away the most powerful weapon of an activist, his intellect and his memory. The most brutal phase came when confusion set in, and he no longer recognized the devoted face of his wife Annie or his beloved daughter. In his final days in Los Angeles, the once decisive man faded into silence, struggling with shattered fragments of memory. The disease advanced quietly, yet relentlessly, draining his remaining strength until he was reduced to an empty shell. On February 24, 2002, Mel Stewart passed away at the age of 72. Bitterly ironic, while Henry Jefferson was always bursting with energy and a forceful voice on screen, Mel's own life ended in the abyss of forgetting, his lifelong struggle concluding in a silence that cut to the bone. Mel Stewart's passing in 2002 closed a life marked by the stark contrast between artistic triumph and the cruelty of illness. Though he departed this world with a mind touched by oblivion, the flame of justice he carried and the unforgettable roles he left behind continue to burn brightly. That resilient man has found eternal peace, leaving the world an undying legacy of courage, a spirit that lives on in every frame of All in the Family. Vincent Gardenia as Frank Lorenzo. Vincent Gardenia's portrayal of Frank Lorenzo brought an irresistibly vivid and humorous energy into the Bunker household kitchen. With his explosive, distinctly Italian performance style, he shaped a man who loved life, adored food, and radiated infectious positivity. The role earned Vincent widespread affection from audiences, making him an irreplaceable presence, one who warmed the series with heartfelt enthusiasm and booming laughter for years on end. In stark contrast to that lively on-screen persona, Vincent's real life unfolded as a somber melody of solitude and burdens carried since youth. Arriving in America in poverty, he abandoned formal schooling to join his father's traveling theater troupe, struggling to survive through the harsh years of the Great Depression. An overwhelming sense of responsibility toward his family led Vincent to quietly close the door on personal happiness. He never married, never allowed himself to dream of a small home of his own. Even career peaks, a Tony Award, and a prestigious Oscar nomination could not fill the vast emptiness of his Brooklyn apartment, where only stacks of lifeless scripts kept him company. He withdrew emotionally, Enduring the quiet frustration of being typecast by Hollywood as the hot-tempered immigrant, his deeper artistic longings restrained, his desire to explore richer inner worlds left unfulfilled. The most devastating storm struck on Christmas night in 1992, a time meant to be warmed by family and reunion. While the world celebrated togetherness, Vincent Gardenia lay alone in a cold Philadelphia hotel room during a touring engagement. A sudden heart attack stole the breath of the 72-year-old man in terrifying silence. The most haunting image came later, when his body was found with a telephone still clutched in his hand, a desperate, failed attempt to call for help in the darkness. With no loved one by his side, no final words spoken, he passed away while the glow of the stage lights still burned behind him. How heartbreaking it is that on screen, Frank Lorenzo was always the center of lively gatherings. Yet in life's final moment, Vincent faced death in chilling isolation, ending a life of tireless giving in a loneliness that cuts to the bone. Vincent Gardenia's passing in 1992 sent a profound shock through the theater world. Though he left this world in solitude, his devoted contributions and extraordinary talent remain a lasting torch in the hearts of audiences. That gifted artist has found his peaceful harbor after a lifetime of labor, leaving behind the passionate image of Frank Lorenzo, an immortal memory that continues to echo in the souls of those who cherish all in the family. Jean Stapleton as Edith Bunker. For television audiences of the 1970s, Jean Stapleton was the embodiment of kindness and unconditional compassion. Through her portrayal of Edith Bunker, she created the image of a beloved national wife, gentle, naive, and deeply warm, softening even the hardened edges of Archie Bunker himself. The impact of the role was so profound that it earned her 3 Emmy Awards and 2 Golden Globes, turning Jean Stapleton into a moral benchmark on American television for decades. Yet beneath the polished surface of fame, Jean's real life was marked by a long series of silent, exhausting sacrifices. The first storm came when her career was effectively frozen for years after she was placed on Hollywood's political blacklist, forcing her to endure isolation and rejection within the entertainment industry. When All in the Family finally exploded in popularity, its relentless filming schedule stripped her of the simple right to be fully present as a wife and mother. Prolonged absences from her modest home created an emotional distance between her and her 2 children, John and Pamela Putsch. While Jean shone brilliantly under studio lights, her marriage to director William Putsch buckled under the strain of unequal success, turning what should have been a sanctuary into a space filled with unspoken tension and a chilling silence. The most devastating turning point came in 1983, when her husband William Putsch suddenly died of a massive heart attack at the age of 60. After losing the partner who had stood by her for 26 years, Jean was plunged into profound loneliness, burdened with the responsibility of single-handedly sustaining the totem pole playhouse as it teetered on the edge of collapse. In the years that followed, she lived under the overwhelming shadow of Edith Bunker, a prison of fame that typecast her and gradually pushed her away from public life in quiet exhaustion. The cruelest chapter began when Jean faced the ravages of Alzheimer's disease. Once celebrated for her clarity and intelligence, she slowly lost her memory, forgetting not only her iconic roles, but even the faces of those she loved most. In her final days, she lived in isolation in a Manhattan apartment, struggling with shattered fragments of memory and a complete decline in awareness. In stark contrast to Edith's enduring vitality and human connection, Jean herself faded into the darkness of oblivion, alone within her own mind. On May 31st, 2013, Jean Stapleton passed away at the age of 90, closing the final chapter of a near-century-long life of a true legend. She died quietly, leaving behind an estate valued at $8 million, but also an immeasurable sense of loss for a once radiant star. Though the artist herself is gone, the gentle heart of Edith remains eternal, forever warming the souls of generations of television viewers. Isabel Sanford as Louise Weezy Jefferson. Isabel Sanford's presence in All in the Family marked a historic turning point for American television through her portrayal of Louise Jefferson. With intelligence and quiet resilience, she shaped the image of an exemplary wife and mother, one whose calm strength softened the fiery temper of George Jefferson. The pinnacle of her career came in 1981 when she became the first black actress to win an Emmy Award for a leading role, a powerful testament to extraordinary talent that shattered racial barriers and left an indelible mark on audiences. Isabel's path to glory was soaked in tears and pain from her earliest years. Her childhood unfolded in darkness, scarred by brutal beatings from her father, forcing her to run away from home at just 14 in search of survival. She once believed that marrying a designer in 1940 would bring stability, but the marriage proved to be a suffocating emotional prison. After 10 years of enduring misery, Isabel chose divorce and fell into extreme poverty. Raising 3 young children alone in a Hollywood steeped in discrimination, she took on any work she could find, from domestic labor to manual jobs, counting every dollar while facing rejection from the entertainment industry solely because of her skin color. Tragedy deepened as Isabel's health began to collapse after decades of relentless labor to sustain her career and provide for her family. Heart attacks started to torment her, an inevitable consequence of years lived under unbearable stress. In her final days in Los Angeles, the woman who once stood at the height of power now struggled through chest pains in the terrifying silence of an empty home. The sorrow reached its peak after her death on July 9, 2004. Even in passing, Isabel was denied peace, as bitter disputes over taxes and inheritance erupted among family members. Her $3 million estate, the hard-earned result of a lifetime of sacrifice, became the center of damaging rumors, tarnishing the legacy of a true icon. How bitter it was that on screen she served as the emotional anchor of the Jefferson family, while in her final moments, Isabel faced the unraveling of the very family values she had spent her life defending. Isabel Sanford passed away at the age of 86, leaving behind immeasurable sorrow for a legend who devoted her life to battling fate itself. Though her journey ended amid pain and the noise of legal controversy, the indomitable spirit of Weezy remains an eternal flame of inspiration. In eternal rest, this remarkable woman left behind a legacy that shines far above suffering and the harsh contradictions of earthly life. Jason Wingreen as Harry Snowden. Jason Wingreen's gentle presence as Harry Snowden became the quiet soul of Kelsey's bar, the place that witnessed the full range of Archie Bunker's joys, anger, love, and sorrow. With a natural, understated style, Wingreen created a calming anchor, a devoted listener amid countless heated debates. Harry Snowden was far more than a supporting character. He embodied understanding itself, offering audiences the comforting familiarity of a trusted confidant, someone we all hope to find in life. Few knew that long before stepping into the spotlight, Jason Wingreen had endured the hellscapes of World War II as a member of the Marine Corps Air Forces. The blood-soaked memories of fallen comrades left him scarred with severe post-traumatic stress disorder. In an effort to escape the nightmares that relentlessly haunted him, Jason turned to alcohol as his only refuge, unwittingly turning that destructive habit into a fuse that burned away the stability of his family life. Though he struggled to maintain the appearance of happiness, his home was often filled with suffocating tension, constant arguments, and a growing emotional distance from his wife and children. The pain was compounded by a career confined to minor roles, forcing a genuine talent to live with the bitterness of standing forever on the margins of fame. The deepest psychological blow came when Jason's historic contribution to Star Wars was painfully denied. Though he was the original voice of Boba Fett, his work went uncredited for years, only to be completely replaced by another actor in 2004, stripping away the final source of pride in a lifetime of artistic devotion. True hardship arrived in his later years when Parkinson's disease began to ravage his body. Tremors and neurological decline slowly robbed him of physical control and, most cruelly, stole his voice, the very treasure of his craft. In his final years, Jason lived in isolation at a nursing home in Encino, California, facing blank white walls in profound loneliness. On December 25, 2015, as the world celebrated Christmas Day, Jason Wingreen passed away quietly at the age of 95. In stark contrast to Harry Snowden, who was always ready to share a story and lend an ear, Jason's final moments were swallowed by complete silence, ending a life in the cold distance of time and public forgetfulness. Jason Wingreen's passing in 2015 closed the journey of an artist who devoted nearly a century to his craft and to quiet sacrifice. Though he left this world in solitude, his contributions to cinema remain a precious gem within the collective memory of devoted fans. The bar owner we once knew has found his peaceful harbor, leaving behind the warm smile of Harry Snowden, a lasting symbol of sincerity that will endure through the years. Alan Melvin as Barney Hefner. Alan Melvin's strong, square-jawed face and warm, resonant voice became an indispensable piece of the all-in-the-family universe. Through the character of Barney Hefner, Archie Bunker's loyal friend, he brought balance with a gentle yet layered sense of humor. A steady career spanning more than 5 decades not only made Alan a familiar presence on television, but also earned him the audience's trust, like a dependable neighbor and a quiet, emotional anchor amid every gathering and celebration. Behind that solid, composed exterior lay the lifelong struggle of a talented man destined to play the supporting role in Hollywood. Born into an immigrant family, Alan carried the weight of survival from a young age, exhausting himself working in grocery stores to help support his parents. When he entered the world of acting, he was swept into the industry's merciless cycle of typecasting. Though he longed for complex, dramatic leading roles, Alan was repeatedly overlooked, pigeonholed into minor parts or anonymous voice roles. The lingering sense of being merely a backup option, a perpetual B-list actor, haunted him for years, often driving him to question his own worth. Hollywood's ruthless disposability pushed Alan into periods of depression, especially when some of his most heartfelt performances were cut without mercy in the editing room. The truly cruel chapter began in his later years, when Alan Melvin was forced to confront the limits of mortality. Watching close colleagues pass away one by one, he lived with a growing fear of loneliness and erasure. In 2008, a death sentence arrived in the form of cancer, striking a man once regarded as the picture of health. The disease ravaged Alan's body at an alarming pace, turning a lively performer into a frail, trembling old man confined to his Brentwood apartment. In his final days, he lived in near total isolation, surrounded by suffocating silence, facing blank walls and relentless physical pain. With no applause left and no voices calling his name, Alan slowly faded as public attention shifted to newer stars. On the morning of January 17, 2008, he passed away at the age of 84. How bitter it was that on screen, Barney Hefner was always there to comfort his friends. While in his final moments, Alan faced death alone, leaving this world in heartbreaking silence without the chance to offer a final farewell. Alan Melvin's passing in 2008 left an immense void for those who cherished his honest, unpretentious performances. Though he departed after a long battle with illness, the kindness and devotion he poured into Barney Hefner remain a timeless treasure. That humble man has found eternal rest, leaving behind a life lived quietly yet with dignity, a testament to a pure love for art that rose above fame, ambition, and all fleeting glory. Sally Struthers as Gloria Bunker Stivic. Sally Struthers' appearance as Gloria Bunker Stivic brought a refreshing new energy to 1970s television. With her radiant blonde hair and expressive eyes, she powerfully captured the image of a daughter who was both rebellious and deeply compassionate amid the family's explosive confrontations. That dedication earned her 2 Emmy Awards, cementing Sally's name as an unforgettable part of television memory and a symbol of young American women striving to assert their identity. Yet beyond the applause, a harsh reality had surrounded Sally since her earliest years. The absence of her father, a surgeon who left the family when she was still a child, became a psychological void that fueled her lifelong hunger for validation. Entering Hollywood's glamorous world brought no peace. Instead, she endured cruel judgment over her appearance, dismissed as failing to meet the era's rigid standards of beauty. In 1977, she married psychiatrist William C. Reiner in hopes of finding stability, but rather than understanding, the marriage quickly descended into a living hell of irreconcilable differences. The collapse after just 6 years left Sally deeply scarred by mistrust, forcing her to raise her daughter Samantha alone, under relentless public scrutiny and crushing financial pressure. Her most difficult chapter began when the name Gloria Bunker became an invisible iron cage that confined her career for decades. Sally struggled desperately to break free from typecasting, only to be met with repeated rejection. That pain reached its peak when she chose to use her fame for humanitarian work, supporting organizations that helped starving children. Yet instead of support, she faced ridicule and vicious public attacks. Prolonged legal battles over image rights drained both her faith and her finances, gradually pushing her into the shadows of isolation. By 2025, the vibrant Gloria was nowhere to be seen. In her place stood a weary 78-year-old Sally Struthers, living quietly in Oregon and increasingly distant from the glittering world of entertainment. It is heartbreaking that on screen she served as the bridge that held a family together, while in real life her journey unfolded in a silence so deep it bordered on loneliness, carrying emotional scars that never truly healed. Though the spotlight of her youth has long faded, Sally Struthers has chosen to face aging with calm and dignity. After enduring loss and relentless prejudice, the spirit of Gloria remains a warm flame that continues to comfort generations of viewers. Even as she has stepped behind the velvet curtain, Sally's quiet devotion to art and humanitarian causes endures, an enduring chapter that will forever live in the hearts of those who cherish all in the family. Mike Evans as Lionel Jefferson. Television audiences of the 1970s always held a special place for Mike Evans, the actor who brought Lionel Jefferson vividly to life. First appearing in 1971 at just 21 years old, he introduced the image of an intelligent, sharp-minded young black man who was unafraid of confrontation. Lionel was not only a vital bridge between the Bunker and Jefferson families, but also a voice that embodied the younger generation's desire for self-assertion during a turbulent chapter in American society. Behind the confident smile seen on television, Mike Evans' real life became a series of desperate efforts to escape the grip of discrimination and personal stagnation. Despite his natural talent as a writer and his role as co-creator of the successful series Good Times, he repeatedly faced rejection in Hollywood, confined to stereotypical roles shaped by deep-seated prejudice. That pain deepened further when his long-standing marriage unexpectedly collapsed in 1980. The separation plunged Mike into profound emptiness, leaving his relationship with his daughter, Carlina Evans, distant and strained. In an attempt to cope with the suffocating pressure of a career slipping into obscurity and the ache of family loss, he turned to cigarettes as a dangerous form of self-medication, unknowingly planting the seeds for a fatal health verdict later in life. The most devastating storm struck in 2006 when Mike Evans was diagnosed with terminal throat cancer. Any hope of a triumphant comeback vanished in an instant. The battle unfolded at a terrifying pace. Within just 11 weeks, the disease drained the strength of a man who was only 57 years old. He lost his voice, the most precious instrument of an actor, and spent his final days in painful silence at his home in 29 Palms, California. Watching his body weaken day by day, Mike fell into despair, realizing that the time remaining was far too short to mend the broken bonds with his loved ones. On December 14, 2006, he passed away in heartbreaking quiet, with his screenwriting dreams still unfinished. Bitterly ironic, while Lionel Jefferson was known for his sharp, vibrant exchanges on screen, Mike's own journey ended in helpless silence, unable to speak a final, complete farewell. Mike Evans's sudden passing left behind a lingering sense of loss for one of American entertainment's most multifaceted talents. Though he departed this world at a relatively young age, carrying unresolved personal sorrow, the spirit of the young Lionel Jefferson remains a radiant memory. The artist finally found rest after years of turmoil, leaving behind films and scripts rich in human values, works that continue to warm the hearts of generations of viewers. Burt Mustin as Justin Quigley. The warm, humorous image of old man Justin Quigley, brought to life by Burt Mustin, became a deeply human highlight in the portrait of the Bunker family. With an optimistic spirit and a sharp intellect hidden behind his aged appearance, he painted a vibrant portrait of old age, one that inspired resilience in the face of time's limits. Burt was never just a supporting actor. He stood as a symbol of quiet perseverance, offering profound lessons about cherishing life and leaving an indelible mark on audiences through rare sincerity. The world only came to know a radiant Burt Mustin in his later years, yet few understood the pain of a talent buried for more than half a century. Born in 1884, Burt dreamed of an artistic life early on, but harsh family opposition forced him to suppress that passion and take on practical jobs such as selling insurance and working as a car dealer. The economic storms of the Great Depression in the 1930s pushed him to the brink of exhaustion, struggling day by day simply to keep his family from falling into ruin. Tragedy reached its peak in 1969, when his beloved wife and lifelong companion, Robina Mustin, passed away after 54 years together. Losing his sole emotional anchor, just as he finally touched Hollywood success at the age of 85, left a wound that never healed, plunging him into profound loneliness amid the applause of audiences. Burt's late-blooming artistic journey became a relentless race against death, fought within a body already worn by time. Beginning his acting career at 67, he often faced skepticism from a youth-driven Hollywood, and a quiet insecurity born of knowing his time to give was limited. During the filming of All in the Family, well into his 90s, Burt endured blazing studio lights and relentless joint pain to meet the demands of a grueling schedule. The harshest chapter came during his final months at the Motion Picture and Television Country House and Hospital in California. There, he confronted cognitive decline, living in isolation within sterile white walls, far removed from the spotlight he had sacrificed a lifetime to reach. On January 28, 1977, just 2 weeks before his 93rd birthday, Burt Mustin passed away. How deeply ironic that on screen, Justin Quigley overflowed with joy, while in life's final moments, Burt faded quietly into the silence of old age, ending the long labor of a silkworm after the last light of sunset had already gone. Burt Mustin's passing in 1977 closed a bittersweet fairy tale in the history of cinema. Though he left this world just as professional happiness had finally arrived, his unyielding spirit remains a flame that continues to warm generations. The elderly artist found eternal rest, leaving behind the everlasting smile of Justin Quigley, a historical witness, a soul who lived fully until the very last heartbeat, for the pure love of art. Danielle Brisebois as Stephanie Mills. Joining the Bunker family in 1978 at just 9 years old, Danielle Brisebois quickly won the hearts of viewers through her portrayal of the resilient young Stephanie Mills. Her clear, innocent gaze and natural performance turned Stephanie into the sweetest source of comfort for the elderly couple, Archie and Edith. The role not only propelled Danielle's name across newspaper headlines of the time, but also made her one of the most sought-after child actors, promising a radiant future in Hollywood. Yet the harsh reality behind the camera robbed Danielle of a true childhood, transforming her into a money-making machine under relentless work pressure from the age of 7. As she entered the vulnerable years of adolescence, she faced Hollywood's brutal cycle of rejection. The image of Stephanie Mills had become so deeply ingrained that it turned into an invisible prison, preventing the public from accepting her growth. Throughout her teenage years, Danielle suffered a severe identity crisis, repeatedly turned away by filmmakers simply because she still looked too much like a child. Insecurity about her appearance was further deepened by cruel public commentary on the changes in her body, pushing her into prolonged depression and a life of isolation in the heart of expensive Los Angeles. The most painful turning point came when Danielle chose to leave acting behind and seek survival through music, a journey marked by blood and tears. She accepted starting from zero, working in cheap recording studios and enduring ridicule from colleagues who dismissed her as an actress trying to sing. The harshest period consisted of sleepless nights spent writing songs for other stars, such as Natasha Bedingfield and Kelly Clarkson, sacrificing her already fragile health in exchange for quiet recognition behind the scenes. Financial pressure and the fear of being forgotten eroded her strength to the point of exhaustion. How bitter it was that on screen, little Stephanie was always protected by her family, while in real life, Danielle stood alone against the violent waves of her career, sacrificing her youth and personal relationships to avoid being drowned by the brilliance of her own past. At the age of 56, Danielle Brisebois has chosen a private life alongside her husband, musician Nick Lashley, and their twin daughters, Charlotte and Lola. Though she no longer stands beneath the spotlight as a leading actress, her musical legacy and the enduring image of the courageous Stephanie Mills remain priceless memories. Her life stands as a testament to perseverance, overcoming the scars of early fame to finally discover true peace within her soul. Bob Hastings as Tommy Kelsey. Bob Hastings' presence as bar owner. Tommy Kelsey brought a sense of authenticity and warmth to the everyday moments of the Bunker family. With his calm, gentle performance, he created a space of connection, a place where Archie could unload the weight of long, exhausting workdays. Tommy Kelsey was far more than a minor character. Through Bob's portrayal, he became an emotional bridge that helped shape the early success of the series, etching the image of an upright, decent man into the hearts of viewers. Behind those light-hearted scenes, however, was a soul deeply scarred by the shadows of the past and the harshness of reality. A former Air Force serviceman in World War II, Bob Hastings returned from the battlefield, carrying the painful burden of post-traumatic stress disorder. Memories of bombs, gunfire, and fallen comrades haunted him for decades, driving him into a prolonged struggle with alcoholism as a means of escape. That inner turmoil was compounded by life in the long shadow of his famous younger brother, Don Hastings, leaving Bob with a persistent sense of inferiority and self-doubt. In 1977, another devastating blow struck when he was abruptly replaced by Jason Wingreen, without a clear explanation from the producers. losing a role he had poured his heart into at a moment when his career desperately needed stability, inflicted a deep wound on his pride, pushing him into years of hardship and painful uncertainty about the path he had chosen. The most brutal turning point came in Bob Hastings' later years. In 2014, he was diagnosed with terminal pancreatic cancer, a merciless sentence for a man already 89 years old. The disease advanced at a terrifying pace, draining his strength and reducing the once vibrant performer to a frail figure trembling in a hospital bed. His final days in Burbank, California, unfolded as a lonely, agonizing battle for survival amid chilling silence. With the stage lights long extinguished and voice-acting offers fading away, Bob faced death in solitude, left only with relentless pain and memories of a once brilliant past. On June 30th, 2014, Bob Hastings passed away. Bitterly ironic, while Tommy Kelsey was always the one who listened and warmed the souls of others in a lively bar. Bob's final moments were spent alone among stark white walls, ending a life of devotion in a silence that tightens the heart. Bob Hastings' death in 2014 brought to a close a long journey defined by passion and quiet sacrifice. Though he left this world after years of battling illness and psychological wounds, his contributions to radio and television remain a legacy worthy of remembrance. The bar owner we once knew has found eternal rest, leaving behind the gentle smile of Tommy Kelsey, a pure artistic spirit that will forever live on in the hearts of those who cherish all in the family. Betty Garrett as Irene Lorenzo. Betty Garrett's appearance as Irene Lorenzo brought a breath of confidence and modern thinking to the streets of Queens. With her sharp, witty performance, she created a formidable neighbor, one unafraid to stand her ground against Archie Bunker's narrow-minded prejudices. Irene was never just a supporting character. Through Betty's portrayal, she became a symbol of feminism and unwavering conviction, leaving a lasting impression as a strong, independent woman in the hearts of audiences for decades. Behind the radiant smile and her natural gifts in singing and dancing lay a harsh reality, one in which her career was nearly destroyed by the nightmare known as the Hollywood blacklist. The storm broke in the early 1950s, when her husband, actor Larry Parks, was summoned for questioning about his political past. Despite his cooperation, Hollywood ruthlessly erased both of their names from the industry at the very height of their MGM stardom. From a celebrated star, Betty was suddenly reduced to unemployment, shunned by colleagues and ostracized by society for 7 long years. Crushing financial pressure plunged the family into hardship, forcing Betty and her husband to perform in small, low-paying clubs just to support their 2 young sons, enduring humiliation and relentless public scorn along the way. The cruelest sentence arrived in 1975 when her lifelong partner Larry Parks died suddenly from a massive heart attack. After 31 years of shared struggle, Betty lost the one person who had stood beside her through it all, falling into profound loneliness within her Los Angeles home. This painful turning point was followed by a steady decline in her own health, as chronic heart failure began to take its toll. Her final days at Cedars-Sinai Medical Center became a weary battle for breath, her body slowly giving way. Once an artist driven by an unyielding desire to perform, she was forced to accept the devastating truth that she no longer had the strength to stand on stage. She faded quietly into old age, surrounded by absence, as most of her contemporaries had already passed on. On February 12, 2011, Betty Garrett died at the age of 91. Bitterly ironic, while Irene Lorenzo was forever defined by confidence and laughter, Betty's own journey ended in heartbreaking silence, carrying with her the anguish of a brilliant career stolen midway by the injustices of her time. Betty Garrett's passing in 2011 closed the chapter on a life that stood as a monument to courage and devotion. Though she endured immense hardship and years of rejection from the entertainment world, her optimism and extraordinary talent remain an enduring legacy. That resilient woman has now found eternal rest, leaving behind the proud image of Irene Lorenzo, a living testament to the power of art and the will to rise above even the harshest adversity. The journey of the All in the Family stars now comes to an end, leaving behind a haunting echo of lives spent giving everything, like silkworms spinning silk from their own being. Behind the laughter on screen lay silent tears, losses, and unforgiving tragedies carried to the very end. Which life story moved you the most? Share your feelings in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe as we pause together to honor these timeless legends.